Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the channel. And today I'm going to do my review of Starrcade 1986. Starting off the evening, we go to our first match of the night. It is Don and Rocky Cronulla versus Royal Nelson and Tim Horner. I thought it was a decent matchup, back and forth matchup between both teams, with Rocky and Don keeping the pace of the match. But Tim Horner ends up hitting a roll-up, pins for the three, and your winners of the match are Royal Nelson and Tim Horner. Hats off to Royal Nelson and Tim Horner for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Jimmy Garvin versus Brad Armstrong. I thought it was a good matchup, back and forth matchup between both Jimmy Garvin and Brad Armstrong, with Jimmy Garvin keeping the pace of the match. But the match ends up ending in a time limit draw. A couple of things I'll take away from this match is, number one, it was a good matchup. It was definitely a lot better than the first matchup, in my honest opinion. But the only negative part about this match is that this match ended up ending in a time limit draw. I wish we got a clear-cut winner out of either Jimmy Garvin and Brad Armstrong in this matchup. But again, really good matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Hector Guerrero and Baron von Raschke versus Shosky Motley and the Barbarian. I thought it was a good matchup, back and forth matchup between both teams, with Shaska and Barbarian keeping the pace. But Baron von Raschke hits an elbow drop on Watley, pins him for the three, and your winners of the match are Hector Guerrero and Baron von Raschke. Hats off to Hector Guerrero and Baron von Raschke for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Crusher Khrushchev and Ivan Koloff versus Dutch Mantel and Bobby Jaggers for the NWA United States Tag Team Championships. I thought it was a good matchup, back and forth matchup between both teams, with the Crusher and Ivan keeping the pace of the match. Crusher ends up hitting a devastating, ends up hitting Jaggers with a chain, pins him for the three, and your winner of the match, or winners of the match I should say, are Crusher Khrushchev and Ivan Koloff. Hats off to Crusher Khrushchev and Ivan Koloff for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Rick Rude versus Wahoo McDaniel in a strap match. I thought it was an okay matchup, back and forth matchup between both Rick Rude and Wahoo McDaniel, with Wahoo keeping the pace of the match. And your winner of the match is Wahoo McDaniel. Again, a couple things I'll say about this match. Number one, big fan of Rick Rude and Wahoo McDaniel, absolute legends. And I'm not really a big fan of the gimmick matches, you know, like a chairs match or a strap match, tables match, but, you know, this match was pretty good. To be 100% honest with you all, man, this match was absolutely awesome. And again, hats off to Wahoo McDaniel for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Bill Dundee versus Sam Houston for the NWA Central States Heavyweight Championship. It was a good matchup, back and forth matchup between both Dundee and Sam Houston. Dundee was keeping the pace of the match, but your winner of the match by disqualification is Sam Houston. Hats off to Sam Houston for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Paul Jones versus Jimmy Valiant in a hair versus hair match. I thought it was an okay matchup, back and forth matchup between both Paul Jones and Jimmy Valiant, with Paul Jones keeping the pace of the match. But your winner of the match is Jimmy Valiant. Hats off to Jimmy for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Ron Garvin versus Bubba Rogers in a street fight. I thought this was a good matchup, back and forth matchup between both Ronnie Garvin and Bubba Rogers, with Garvin keeping the pace of the match. But Bubba Rogers ultimately gets the win. Hats off to Bubba Rogers for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is the American Dream Dusty Rhodes versus Tully Blanchard for the NWA Television Championship. I thought this was a good matchup as well, back and forth matchup between both Dusty and Tully, with Dusty keeping the pace of the match. Tully ends up hitting Dusty with, it looks like a bag of coins. Dusty then is, pretty much busted wide open from that. But your winner of the match, and at that time new NWA Television Champion, is Tully Blanchard. Hats off to Tony Blanchard for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is the Road Warriors versus the Midnight Express in a Skywalkers match. I thought this was a really good matchup. Back and forth matchup between both teams, with the Road Warriors keeping the pace of the match. Jim Cornette ends up falling off the scaffold, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he ended up breaking both of his knees or both of his legs from the fall from the scaffold, which was brutal. But your winners of the match are the Road Warriors. A couple things I'll say about this matchup too. Number one, the teams that were involved in this matchup. Road Warriors, absolutely legendary tag team, man. Hawk and Animal, fantastic career, man. Probably, to me, one of the greatest tag teams that I've ever lived, in my honest opinion, man. I mean, the matches that they've had, the championships they've won. Road Warriors, absolutely legendary tag team. Then you got the Midnight Express, again, another really good tag team, and to me, honestly, underrated. Really underrated. And Jim Cornette, I mean, Jim Cornette was, a great manager, man. He's managed a lot of talent in professional wrestling. Obviously, Midnight Express. Another notable one for me is Yokozuna. Yokozuna is an absolute legend as well. So, I mean, again, these two teams, man, they tore the house down and made this match, synonymous in professional wrestling. Everybody will remember the Skywalkers match between Road Warriors and the Midnight Express. But hats off to the Road Warriors for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is the Rock and Roll Express versus the Minnesota Wrecking Crew for the NWA Tag Team Championships in a steel cage matchup. Number one, I thought it was a great matchup. Back and forth matchup between both teams, with the Rock and Roll Express keeping the pace of the match. But the Rock and Roll Express ended up escaping the cage, and your winners of the match are the Rock and Roll Express. Hats off to the Rock and Roll Express for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is the main event of Starrcade 1986. It is Ric Flair defending the NWA World Heavyweight Championship against Nikita Koloff. Number one, I thought it was a great matchup. Back and forth matchup between both Flair and Koloff, with Ric Flair keeping the pace of the match. Wrestlers from backstage come out to the ring, end up attacking Nikita Koloff, but Flair ends up retaining the belt and wins by, well, pretty much a double disqualification. A couple things I'll say about this match. Number one, Ric Flair and Nikita Koloff, absolute legends. Ric Flair being the 16-time World Heavyweight Champion, and made pretty much one crazy career for himself in NWA. Pretty much made a name for himself working, under NWA and WCW. Phenomenal career, hands down. Nikita Koloff, again, fantastic career. The only downside I would say about this matchup is that this match ended in a double disqualification. And I wish we got a clear-cut winner in this matchup. But like I do with every single one of these pay-per-views, man, I always give these pay-per-views a rating from 1 out of 10. Starrcade 86, to me, I'm going to have to go with a solid 6, man. I'm not going to sit here and say this was the worst Starrcade I've ever seen, but it definitely was not, the worst, for sure, But again, I'm going to have to give Starrcade 1986 probably a 6 at best, maybe 6.5. But this is my review of Starrcade 1986. I hope you guys are out there staying safe. Be careful, and remember, stay classy.